So, good evening, everybody from London. My name is Lyn Julius, and I am ably assisted by my technical wizard here, Lawrence, who's in the background. Welcome to this very special event organized by Harif, which is the UK Association of Jews from the Middle East and North Africa. And our mission is to raise awareness of the history, heritage, and culture of these Jews. We have a website, www.harif.org. And to receive Zoom details, you have to be subscribed to the website. And of course, all our events are free, all our online events. We have a sister website or news blog, I should call it, called Point of No Return. And you can either Google Point of No Return blog to get to it, or you can access it through the Harif website by clicking on news. This session is being recorded, and I hope that the recording will be up in a matter of hours. And of course, you can consult all our past recordings. There are over 100 of them. We did start this during the pandemic, and it was such a good idea. We've carried on. So there's quite an archive there now of recordings on a whole variety of different subjects. After my conversation with our special guest, there will be an opportunity to ask questions or perhaps make comments, but please do write your comment or your question in the chat. Please do use your real name, because otherwise you won't be allowed to ask a question. So we don't want any Superman or Rabbi or Wonder Woman or anything like that. So on to the subject of tonight's talk. Well, it's not a talk, it's a conversation. And I'm absolutely delighted to be talking with Samantha Ellis about her new book, which is called Chopping Onions on My Heart. And Samantha is a British-born playwright and writer, and she's the author of How to Be a Heroine, which was published by Chatto Windus in 2014. She's also written a biography of Anne Brontë called Take Courage, Anne Brontë and the Art of Life, which was published in January 2017. And Chopping Onions on My Heart has only just come out about 2 weeks ago. Is that so? So I'm really excited to be talking to Samantha about it. So thank you very much indeed for joining me, Samantha.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's so nice to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll start by asking you, Ishlonik.
Thank you. I'm not going to answer in English because my accent is so terrible, but I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Oh, that's really
Oh.
good. So will you just tell me very briefly about why you wrote this book, and could you tell us something about your family?
Absolutely, yes, thank you. My parents are both Iraqi Jews. My father left in 1951, went to Israel, and my mother left in 1971 and came over to the UK. And I was born a few years later, so I grew up with a family mostly of very recent exiled refugees from Iraq, and I was very aware of the culture, the language. You know, I grew up with it all around me. Um, I didn't um I didn't grow up speaking it though. They didn't speak it to me. They spoke it to each other. And as I got a bit older, I wanted to learn more. So when I was about 9, by the time I was about 9, I could understand quite a lot, but I could never speak it. I still can't speak it. Or if I speak it, they always say I have kubo in my mouth. So, which I'm sure is an insult. Lots of people
Yeah.
have had themselves. Um, and they're right. And This is my third book, as you said. I look, I've always known that our language was going extinct. And I've known it my whole life. And when I had a child, my son is 8, and when I had him, I started to think, as a lot of people do when they have kids, about what they're going to pass on, what they can't pass on, how Iraqi will he feel, how much Arabic will he understand. Um, and it started to kind of press on me a little bit, but it really, there was this one incident. I was in a playground. My son was 2.5, and he was playing with this little boy. And the boy was bilingual, French and English. And I was talking to the mum, and the mum said, "Oh, yes, he's bilingual." And I said, "Oh, I wanted my son to go to the French English nursery because I grew up in a bilingual house, and I would like him to be bilingual." And she said to me, "But you're not French." And I said, "No." And she said, "Well, why don't you send him to a nursery for your language?" And I just said, "Oh, because my language is dead." And then I burst into tears. And I had to avoid that playground for quite a long time afterwards because I was so upset. Even though I knew it, actually saying it really sort of punched me in the gut. And I burst into tears. I dragged my son home. I was really, quite overwhelmed by it. And from then on, I sort of thought, well, maybe I need to learn more about it before it's gone. And because the way I understand things is by writing books about them, that's what I thought I would do. But it took a while to.
Took a while. And can you read that short passage which actually recalls that moment when it suddenly hit you?
Well, I was going to read you a slightly
But
later bit
slightly
in the book
different.
as well.
Yeah.
But this is, as I said, it took a while. So this is from 2021. Excuse me. It was 2021. My son, 4.5, splashing in the bath, asked what fudwa meant. He'd heard my mother call me that. I didn't want to tell him it means I would die for you. So I just said it meant I love you very much. Why don't you call me that then? He asked. I didn't know what to say. Fudwa felt too dramatic a term of endearment, although I would die for him. I couldn't say it. Fudwa carries my family's danger, drama, and trauma, which I wanted to leave behind when I became a mother, not to pass on. Although I was born in London, have always been safe from the persecution my family experienced in Iraq, and have never had to face the rupture of leaving my home, I was a worried child and an anxious adult. I imagined trauma gnawing through generation after generation, like the caterpillar eating his way through fruit and cake and sausages in The Very Hungry Caterpillar. Except at the end, you didn't turn into a butterfly, but a guilt-stricken neurotic with recurrent nightmares. I was determined to break the cycle because, after all, we were both safe, weren't we? I wrapped him in the towel, which made him look like a tiny dinosaur with fabric spikes over the hood, and he said it. Budwa. I melted. He loved me very much. Although part of me felt worried again because it was the wrong way round. I was the grown-up. I was supposed to be saying it to him. But still, Kunna Kanaki, we were talking. We were talking Judeo-Iraqi Arabic. We were talking about love and also about death. I wanted to know more about why my language was going extinct and about what else we keep and what we lose, how we decide what to let go of, and how sometimes we don't get to make these decisions, but we're swept up by history or politics or fate. I was acutely aware that difficult family stories can weigh us down, but also that sometimes our ancestors give us the survival kits we need to be resilient and to heal. It seemed crucial now to think much more deeply about all of this, about what we pass on, not just as parents, if we become parents, but what we put out into the world, the legacies we leave, the ideas we give, the stories we tell, the contributions we make, the kindnesses we are hopefully remembered for, the food we cook for friends. I needed to understand the stories of my culture and community before they were lost, or worse, erased, so I could tell them to my son and to anyone who cared to listen. I wanted to work out how to be a good future ancestor myself. I wanted to write down the recipes. I wanted to hold the things my parents brought from Iraq and keep them safe and to know their stories. And I wanted to think about what heirlooms I might pass on, what memories, what imprints, and fast. It felt as if a flood was coming and I needed urgently to build an ark.
Right. You needed to build the Noah's Ark and save what you wanted to save and lose what you wanted to lose. So
Yeah.
So I mean, was transgenerational trauma, is that what you wanted to lose?
I
And
mean,
in what
originally
way
that's
did it affect your family?
well, I mean, I grew up on these stories. My son is 8, and I have really largely protected him from what I knew about. But I mean, as a small child, I mean, I knew that my mother's family had all mostly been in prison in Iraq. When they tried to escape, they were put into prison, and I knew quite a lot about that actually. For a long time, I didn't eat watermelon because my mother told me this story about how when they were in prison, a guard gave them a watermelon. And I made the link in my head that watermelon was, the food of trauma, the food of prison. Anyway, I wouldn't eat it for ages. It really, stuck in my mind. Um, there were a few things like that. Later on, I found out that my grandmother, who passed away last year, she was 95. She was in the Farhood, and she told me stories about that. Um, there was generally a sense of being unsafe, not knowing if we would be able to stay in a place, feeling anxious about that, and also the rupture, of the family having lost its home, its culture, its place, its language. And even though I hadn't, as I said, I hadn't lost it. I mean, I was born here. Have had an easy life, but there was a sense of loss anyway. Yes, and when I had my son, I was like, he's going to have none of this. He will have no nightmares, But I've shifted my perspective on that. I feel like we do need to pass these stories on, maybe in a way that helps people to be resilient and to understand. If that's possible, I don't know. I haven't solved it.
Because it
Um,
does help people who've been through trauma to talk through it in a way,
yes.
doesn't it? Sort of,
Yeah, I think so.
yeah.
Yeah. And to share things as a family and as a community, I think is very helpful. I mean, I realized that all the sort of things we do all together as a family are very healing. It's a strategy for healing, for um, resilience, for togetherness, for looking forward, and we pass that on as well. So there is that too.
Right. So shall we talk about Judeo-Arabic as a language? I mean,
Yeah,
it's got some really expressive phrases, hasn't it? That
yeah.
seem to be, particular to any other language. But first of all, can you explain the difference between Judeo-Arabic and Arabic, for instance?
Yes, okay, I'm gonna have a go here. Um, and also I should say some people say it's a dialect. And I went backwards and forwards with various linguists about this, and there is no consensus. So I'm calling it a language, but people can disagree if they want to. The linguists themselves cannot decide. Um, so what seems to have happened is our community, first arrived in Iraq in 587 BCE, so an unimaginably long time ago when Nebuchadnezzar brought us over, brought the community over to as captive labor really. And the Jews who arrived in Iraq then were speaking Hebrew. When they got to Iraq, they switched to the local language, which was Aramaic, but they quickly developed their own language, which was called Jewish Babylonian Aramaic. And that, of course, we know because the Babylonian Talmud is written in it. Um, and that went on for centuries. And then, of course, and it picked up bits from everyone who conquered. I mean, I tried to make a list, a timeline of it was conquered a lot of times, Iraq, in the ancient time. So it picked up Persian, so it's picking up all these other words. When the Arab conquest comes in the 6th century, everyone switches to Arabic, including the Jews. But the Jews who are in Iraq carried over not just words, but constructions, word order, grammar from Aramaic, and prior to that from Hebrew as well. So they carried all of this over. So the the Arabic that the Jews were speaking in Iraq was always very different. There were a lot of common words, there's a lot of common constructions, but there is a difference. Um, and I think that continued. So, and actually often the Jewish Arabic we carried in Iraq, we carried over some of the very ancient constructions. So our language is very ancient in some ways. It's not a very modern Arabic, is what how it was explained to me. So it's actually linguistically quite an interesting language, and people are doing a lot of interesting work on it now. Um,
And these amazing expressions like chopping onions on your heart, what does it actually mean?
Well, it's like rubbing salt in the wound. So I would
Yeah.
say, you're chopping onions on my heart. Yithram Basel al Rasafadi. I'm going to apologize again for my pronunciation. Um, but I love that it's so visceral. In any other language you would, I mean, rubbing salt is quite bad, but this is, you're using the heart as a chopping board. It's an onion which makes you cry, makes you sore, makes you uncomfortable. The whole thing is kind of so freighted. Yeah, I've always loved that phrase. I was going to call it Living in the Days of the Aubergines. I love that, Liam Babanjan, but we were worried about the aubergine emoji being a bit confusing. So we went with the onions instead.
You
And in
went-
America, it was going to be published as Always Carry Salt because they were worried that it would sound like a cookbook. So anyone
Oh,
waiting for it in America, that's what it will be.
right. Okay, that's useful to know. And I think while we're talking about language, fidwa is the equivalent of kapara, isn't it, in Hebrew? You hear that a lot in Israel, don't you?
Yes,
Like
yes, and
I
there's
would
loads of
sacrifice myself for you. I love you so
yeah.
much.
And there's loads of other similar. The Hub book is also, I think, and there's quite a few
Yeah.
sacrificing yourself phrases.
Right. And
Um,
the Muslims don't actually use that word. They don't say that.
I am not sure. I don't know, but I'm not sure they use Fudwa. I'm not sure.
No, no.
I know that Iraqis in Mosul and around there, often the Maslawi Arabic is very similar to ours, but it doesn't have this Aramaic base in the same way, and obviously it doesn't have the Hebrew base, so it's not the same. But I don't know whether they use. I mean, the thing is, everyone was talking to everyone else. So the
Yeah,
language was going backwards and forwards. So there are borrowings everywhere from us
right.
to us, I think. And I think it's important to acknowledge that.
Yes, yeah, indeed. But I mean the accent is different, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
there's this idea that if a Jew wants to speak to a non-Jew, then he would actually switch his accent.
Yes, and we'd
Um,
switch into the other language as
yeah.
well. I mean, switching all the time. Yeah, and there's a wonderful part in Naim Qatam's book.
Mm,
What's it called? Farewell Babylon.
yes.
The wonderful part in that beginning of that where they're all in a cafe, him and all of his friends, all these young literary men are in a cafe,
Mm,
and suddenly, to his horror, and I think they're all different, they're all from different communities, and they're all speaking in, the Muslim dialect, the main dialect or language. And then suddenly, to his horror, one of his friends starts speaking in the Jewish language, and he sort of, feels very uncomfortable and very anxious. Everyone understands him, but why is he speaking in it? And the friend keeps going, and there's this wonderful description of suddenly feeling incredibly liberated. We're all speaking, and they're all talking about the Iraq they want to build. This is the 1920s. It's a very hopeful time, you know, and saying, oh well, maybe we could all speak about it in our own languages, in our own dialects. We all understand each other. But that, as we know, that optimism, sadly, even then that book didn't last.
it didn't last. No, that's right. And I remember a story about Jews who left Iraq as your mother tried to leave before she got arrested, and and,
Yes,
and they were sworn to secrecy. They were told not to speak, not to open their mouths while they were
yeah,
doing this perilous journey through the north of Iraq and over the border.
yes,
Because
because the
that
people
would
would
be the head
immediately,
of it. Yeah,
yeah, wouldn't know. Yeah,
they would know
um,
immediately. Yeah.
yeah,
So what I found really, really brilliant actually was the way you talk about the flood, the flood and Noah's Ark, salvaging the culture. And yet that refers back to an even older legend, that the legend of Noah's Ark was actually inspired by old Mesopotamian mythology.
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean that was so clever.
Oh, thank you.
I,
Well, I feel like we are, we have to connect to these Iraqi stories. We are Iraqi, all these
right,
Mesopotamian stories ours as well,
Yeah. Yeah.
and they're so powerful. But I love the idea. I've always been fascinated by the art, by the idea that you put on exactly what you need,
Right.
you set
Yeah.
off, and you survive.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm
Yeah.
very interested in what is portable and what isn't. So the recipes, I ended up putting recipes in the book because
Right.
I said I felt, you can cook a recipe, an ancestor's recipe, and as you are holding it in your hands, as you're tasting it, you are traveling back in time to that ancestor and what they were cooking and eating. You are feeling the same feelings, you have the same feeling in your mouth, in your hands. I felt like that was almost the most portable, form of culture that
Yeah.
we have. But
And
then
the
there
most,
was
yeah, and
sorry.
the most enduring as well. I think Claudia Roden says that food is the last thing to be let go of in a
Oh
culture
wow. Oh, I didn't know that. That's a wonderful.
like that.
Yeah. I mean, that's very beautiful. And it's true. I mean, it is a way, and it's a way of sharing it as well. You cook for your family, for your kids, for the grandchildren if you have, it's a beautiful way of sharing your culture. So I felt that the food was portable, but even with the food, there are things that are not portable, like there are fruits that don't grow here. I mean, I was the
Right. And so
ages.
can you tell me about the nutmeg?
Yeah. So, so
That's fantastic.
Oh, my family were always talking about this fruit, the nubug, and they said it's delicious, and my grandma said it's like chocolate, it grows everywhere. She said everyone has two, three in their garden. I was like, how do you have three trees? Very slightly exaggerated, this idea that everywhere there is the nubug. And I kept asking, well, surely we get everything here. Surely we can get it here. And I was asking, no one has seen it, whatever. And then I was talking to an Iraqi Muslim friend, and he said, sometimes there's a shop near me, and sometimes they have it. I've had it once or twice. And he said, I'll tell my mum next time it comes, she'll call you. I said, okay. And I thought, oh, his mum's not going to remember to call me. Anyway, some time went by. He was born here, this friend, and he had never been to Iraq. He suddenly, I saw on social media, he's in Iraq, and I thought, wow, he's in Baghdad. And then I got this phone call and he said, I'm back. And look what I've got you. And there was a picture of this little tiny punnet of fruit. And I said, is that not I was so excited. So I went to meet him. It was I went to meet him in Hoxton, it's pouring in rain. And he produced this little thing out of his bag. And we had this, I mean, there can't have been more than 20 of them. And we shared them. I gave them to my mom, I was giving to my uncle, everyone who wanted it, and I got to taste it. They weren't the best because it was the wrong season, but they were, pretty
What
good.
do they taste like? What does it taste like?
I thought something between an apricot and a date. I
Yeah.
thought, but and slightly kind of fibrous, like apricots can be, and delicious. But I was told, but they don't travel well. So even though people have tried to import them, you can't. They don't keep. So so far, I mean, I suppose the demand is not so great, but.
Yeah.
That's why you can't get them here. But unless it had been for this friend of mine, I wouldn't have had it. And so not everything is portable, even with food,
Right. You did try to plant a seed from one of
Oh, I
these.
tried so hard. And I had a neighbor at the time who was a gardener, and I said, here, please, you can do this. Neither of us succeeded. If he can't do it, we tried everything. We planted it in various different places and different ways. We planted the stones. So
Right.
every single one got planted, but no luck.
No luck. So nothing
No,
sprouted, nothing
no,
sprouted in your back garden. No.
no.
So the Nile remains a sort of unattainable kind of symbol of Iraqi
Yeah.
culture in a way.
Yeah, I mean there are similar fruits you can get around the world, but the actual Iraqi one, no. And
Yeah.
so it just was interesting in terms of some things we can't hold on to. And there what I was interested in as well, there are choices you can make and there are choices that are taken away from you,
Yeah.
Um, I don't have the choice to pop over to Baghdad. If my son refused to eat it, of course he didn't want to try it. But if he had eaten it and it was his favorite thing in the world, I couldn't say to you, "Don't worry, I'll go get you some next week." I can't.
Yeah.
And I can't pass that on. You know, he might have had one taste in his life and that would have been it. I mean, as it happens, he refused to have even that. But that's kids for you.
Yeah, yeah, no, and you say that you tried so hard to get him interested in Iraqi food.
I
Uh,
mean, he does eat,
yeah,
he eats kubashwanda. He does eat
yeah,
quite a
no,
lot. My mum did
yeah,
better.
Kibba Shawanda, can you describe what it is to those who've
Yes,
never tried
kubashwanda
it?
is beetroot kubba. So it's the spiced minced meat, either lamb or beef, and then it goes into a shell, which is ground rice and more minced meat, and then it's cooked with a sweet and sour sauce with beetroots. It's really good, and then the kubbas themselves they become sort of ruby red. And yeah, I mean, my son does eat those. I mean, you know,
Yeah, and
my
it
mother
takes
did
ages
better.
to prepare, doesn't it? I mean,
Sorry?
it takes ages to
Oh
prepare.
yeah, yeah. It's a lengthy.
Yeah, I mean, he really has chosen the most labor-intensive recipe you can think of.
Yeah. Luckily, my mum makes it for him. But yes, no, absolutely. But you know, you pass on what you can, you know, and
Yeah,
I think it's important to try. I think it's if you want to, I think it's important to try, and
yeah.
they'll take what they want to, I guess.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, absolutely. Can we go back to the language? Because
yes.
you decided to take a course at the Oxford School of Rare Languages, but
Yeah, this is
I get the impression you were a bit disappointed by it.
Oh no, I loved it. The course was
Yeah,
fantastic. I wasn't no, I did two courses. I
I,
that was the second one, and it was the Oxford School of Rare Jewish
sorry,
Languages.
rare Jewish.
No, it's an
Yeah,
amazing thing. They do their courses on Zoom and they're free. I don't know who funds them. It's run at Oxford. And what's great is the whole apparatus of it is done by Oxford University. So you have coursework and all this sort of stuff that, you know, it's done really brilliantly. Um, and I did it with an amazing Iraqi Jewish academic who's based now in Canada, I think. He was brought up in Israel, Asaf Bar Moshe. He's written a textbook of our language, which is it's published as a kind of open source, so anyone can find it. Um, and the course was fantastic. I mean, I really loved it. But I'm not speaking. It's very hard to speak. I mean, I'm not very good at, you know, I'm not very confident at languages, at speaking them. But honestly, it was incredibly exciting. Because I was learning with people from all over the world. I'd say about half of us were Iraqi Jews like me, second or third generation. But then there was someone from South Korea. Her accent is better than mine. There was someone in Ukraine. I mean, I just thought this is amazing. Anyone could learn, you know, in the way that I might decide to brush up my French over the summer. People could come and learn our language. Like I say like it's a real language. Of course, it is a real language, but because it's only been ever been oral, really, hardly ever been written down.
yeah,
It's, you know, when Iraqi Jews were writing books, they were writing them either in classical Arabic or in whatever languages of wherever we ended up, you know, in the world. And so there isn't a literature like there is with Yiddish. You know, but so it's always felt, I think even in the community, and I mean, talking to my grandmother, this was the case, and to other people, to older people in the community, it's always felt a bit secondary, you know, not as important as the real languages, you know, something secondary, something slightly legitimate.
yeah,
Um, so actually to go to be able to study it over Zoom at Oxford was
yeah.
quite something, and it's still going on, these courses. I would really recommend them. They're really good.
So
Um,
yeah, I just got the impression that you know that you felt that this focus on you know almost extinct languages was quite depressing. That people were counting how many speakers of these languages still exist.
Oh, yeah, not from that course. That course was actually the only
Yeah,
place where people were saying, let's actually keep it alive. But yes, I feel like generally the conversation around, you're absolutely right, around endangered languances is
mm,
depressing. It's like, oh, the last two speakers who don't
yeah,
talk to each other because, and you know, this countdown. And once you start counting down, you're trying to get to zero. You know, if I start going 10, 9, 8, you're waiting for me to get to zero. And
mm,
actually, things can revive. Um, and I came across this idea that languages can have keepers as well as speakers, which I found very liberating as a non-speaker. The idea that I could be a keeper, So I can impart maybe information about the language or a feeling of the language or write what I can in my book about the language or tell people about it. But I don't necessarily have to be speaking it
Yet,
or
yes.
speaking it well. And actually, the idea that you can be a keeper of culture is very exciting to me, like an archivist of your community or your family story. We're all archivists of our family stories. It feels quite liberating. But yeah, all this countdown stuff. But people still ask me how many speakers, and the thing is, the number doesn't matter. What I was told by linguists is it matters if it's being passed down, because
Mm,
there can be a million speakers in one generation, and if that generation, once that generation does not pass it down, it can quickly go to zero.
right.
It's about whether it's being passed down the generations.
Yeah. And of course, to do that, you need memory, don't you? You need to be able to remember. And
Yeah.
that is where Umber comes in, because
Yes.
I've not had
I'm so
Umber
happy you have
yet.
the job.
So Umber makes its appearance in your book. Can you explain
I
how
mean,
and
I feel
why?
Umber should be in every book by Iraqi Jew or not. I mean,
What is it, first of all? What is this?
so Umber is the mango pickle, not chutney, mango pickle, that is our. I mean, I'd almost call it our sort of our national essence if we had, I feel like it's our kind of, it goes well with everything. It's sour. It's got this amazing color to it. I was I mean, Umber was always going to be in the book, but then I discovered this story that I was completely fascinated by, which is that the poet Siegfried Sassoon, the war poet, the British war poet, his great grandfather may have invented Umber. Now, it's almost certainly a mythical story, but it's a great story. Um, and the story goes that he left Baghdad, ended up in India in
Right.
the
So this is
1700s.
David Sassoon. David
David
Sassoon.
Sassoon, sorry, yeah, the great grandfather of the poet, David Sassoon, and then of course he founded his huge business empire. They were the Rothschilds of the East, um, and apparently he had 14 children, and it was an empire all over the world. He was a busy man, and apparently during all of this, he tasted Indian mangoes. He wanted to give them to his friends back in Iraq. He realized they wouldn't keep, so he pickled them. I mean, who knows how someone's, but certainly there was a roaring trade in umber from India to Iraq from around that time. And Iraqi Jews, it was always associated with our community. And I was also fascinated the that um, by the time it got to the poet Siegfried Sassoon, the community, that family had become so successful and they'd spread all over the world. Um, and he actually grew up in a sort of high Anglican, very sort of British home, um, horse riding, shooting, I mean, hunting foxes, very un-Iraqi. He probably never tasted umber and he really never knew where he was. And so this suddenly felt like a sort of terrifying story to me that, of how we lose our culture and how people how if it's not transmitted, people lose their identity. And I'd always been aware Sigrid Sassoon, his poems are always very sort of tortured and repressed and sort of, unhappy. There's something very unsettled about him. And, I thought that was to do with all sorts of things in his other things in his life. But I mean, I think part of it is not really having ever had a sense of where he came from. And again, some of these decisions were not made for him. His father died young. He wasn't able to pass it on. So yeah, I was interested in it as a kind of cautionary tale. But yeah, Umber was always going to go into the book. I felt, there was even more Umber in the first draft, and I just felt it's becoming an Umber book. It needs to be taken down a bit.
Oh dear, no. Well, at least it's there.
At
It's
least it's
there.
there.
I suppose it must be comforting to know that if you go into an Israeli supermarket, you can actually buy amber.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's
Yeah,
very, it's become our sort of national. I don't know, we can't really say national, but our community's condiment, hasn't it?
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so
And
yeah,
in the same way, Israeli food culture has preserved some
yes,
Iraqi food, like
yes.
the sabir.
Hmm.
was invented by a man called Sabir,
Yes.
wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I know my sort of local caterer does do kabashawanda, the
Oh,
wonderful
fantastic.
meatballs in beetroot
The one
sauce.
that in Israel.
Yeah, in
Yeah, yeah.
Israel. So that still
Oh,
exists.
oh Mama, or whatever
Yeah,
it's called. Yeah.
yeah. Oh, mama, if
By
anyone's
the Carmel
interested.
Market,
Yeah.
big food.
Uh,
Oh,
so it's still there. It's still there,
yeah.
being preserved. You
I
know.
mean, I think the food definitely has been preserved, certainly in Israel. I think the language, there was, that's a real sadness. I think that the Iraqi Jews who went to Israel were very much encouraged to speak Hebrew, as were Yiddish speakers. Um, and both of these languages were lost. And but I think with with the Iraqi Jews and the other Arabic speaking Jews, there was this sense that Arabic was becoming a difficult language to speak in Israel because of the situation. And I think, it's a shame that they weren't able to keep it going alongside. Um, so I think that is a real sadness. And again, in Yiddish, really, because of the literature, Yiddish has been preserved. It's
Mm.
not as a spoken language so much, but as a literary language. And we don't have that with ours.
No, no,
You
it's
know.
always been an oral language, even though it was written in Hebrew characters, wasn't
And
it?
in Arabic, yeah, this is another thing I discovered
And
because
in
people kept
Arabic.
telling me originally it was only written in Hebrew, and I kept saying, but most of my family, much not most, but a lot of my family don't read Hebrew, so how can that be? And my grandmother, as I said, she passed away last year at 95. She doesn't read Hebrew. Um, and so I said, well, how is she, she would write it in Arabic letters. I think what seems to have happened is that it was originally written down in Hebrew, and then later, particularly women who might not have had a religious education would write it in whatever they're writing in. They're writing in Arabic, they write it in Arabic.
Right,
And then also Jews who stayed longer past 51 tended to write it more in Arabic. But as you say, it was mainly in oral language.
right,
So,
right. Okay, so I'm actually struck by the number of actually mainly women who have kind of started delving into this culture, and
mm.
most of whom have never been in Iraq. I'm thinking of Sarah Sassoon. I'm thinking of Carol Isaacs, Marina.
Marina Benjamin,
Well,
right?
Marina Benjamin
Abby.
visit,
Yeah.
didn't she? But she wasn't born in Iraq. She
No.
wasn't brought up there.
Yeah.
So, but of course, you've got people like Miriam Halahmi, whose husband was from Iraq, and she
Yes.
in a book set in Iraq. And Linda Dango, of course, who was born there, and she tells stories through food,
Yes.
as you do, and as Sarah Sassoon does. I mean, how do you account for this phenomenon? Um,
Of women. Well, I mean, I think what I've been told is that generally women tend to be the family archivists or the family storytellers because, we the women tend to be the ones bringing up the younger children and they start telling the stories. And so that's a thing across cultures, I suppose. Um, I don't know why so many of us are writing about, but I suppose this is the last chance. It's a really sad thing to say, but this is the last chance, um, the, to speak to people who were in Iraq to get the stories down. I mean, I was very keen to pin down, and so I interviewed my father, my mother, and my grandmother for this book, and most of the stories I knew already, but I knew them the way a child knows their parents' stories, bits here, bits there. It's not that I hadn't been paying attention, but you don't sit down with anyone and just say, okay, we've got an hour now, and I want just everything down. We're not going to stop and talk about other things and, do things. We're just going to do this. And it was really important to me to sort of get the stories down and to really understand them. Um, because I felt that I needed to understand where I came from,
yeah,
um, and let alone be able to pass it on. And also I suppose it's not just about passing it on to, it's very grandiose that I needed to do it to pass on to my child. No, I mean I was writing a book. I wanted to be able to tell these stories to a wider um, to a wider audience. And actually, I should say, I have been absolutely blown away. I've had already, it's only been a couple of weeks, I've had some amazing messages from Iraqi Jews, and particularly second and third generation Iraqi Jews saying that who have read my book, who have, telling me their stories, telling me what they've learned or not learned. I mean, really, the most telling me their family stories, people who are quite distanced from their family stories and just saying that they've been able to fill in gaps. It's been already just wonderful. And also I've had some I've had a couple of like lovely responses from people not in the community. One of my very nice Ashkenazi friends sent me a picture of her cat with the word bazuna, which is the Jewish-Iraqi Arabic for cat, written on the top, and it just made me so happy. I thought, oh my goodness, that's gone out there. That's one person who's learned to say bazuna. That's made me really happy.
Yes.
And my mother and I were out the other day, and an Ashkenaz, no, sorry, a non-Jewish friend of hers who'd read an article of mine rang her up and said, Eshlanuk, and we just couldn't stop laughing. It was fantastic. So
Maybe that's the key to reviving the language,
maybe, but
Believe.
it's just nice to see these kind of tendrils kind of going out there.
Yeah, yeah. And I was struck by, I mean, it's been out for 2 weeks, I think, and you've
That's
already
right.
had two articles in The Guardian, which is not known for, even I don't know, talking about Jews. I mean, Jews don't count as far as they're concerned,
Well,
do
my editors there are both Jewish women, and they were
they? Are
they
they?
were absolutely fantastic. I've got to say, I've had really lovely support.
Yes.
So yeah, it's been really wonderful. So yeah, it's been but it's just interesting to have these conversations with people. I mean, the other thing is that I became aware of is because although my father's family left in 51, my mother's family left in 71. It's quite I realize it's quite unusual to be, sort of my age. I've just turned 50. And to have speakers for parents, because actually there's this I mean, some people maybe are on this. There's this Facebook group which has over 80,000 people on it,
Yes.
called something like Preserving the Iraqi Jewish Language. It's an Israeli group, and I joined it thinking, oh, brilliant, this is fine. The language is going to be fine. There's over 80,000 people here. We will be fine. But actually, most people on that group, because they're in Israel, are third generation.
Yes.
And they all want, they're asking each other things like, what does ashdiduk mean? What does, and it's wonderful that people are asking and answering. But you get the sense that a lot has been already lost. And I mean, um, one thing that's very moving on that group is every now and again someone will say, "Can anyone speak to my father, my mother?" And it will be a family where there's no speakers left in the family, and
Yeah.
there's one elderly person who has lost anyone they can speak to. But what's amazing is every time it's happened, I thought, "Oh gosh," and they're in Israel. I can't help them. I'm not round the corner, even if I could speak. Usually
Yeah.
within an hour, someone has said, I'll be round. I'll be round
Oh,
Saturday. I'm bringing Kuba or whatever, and you think, oh my goodness, this is amazing, that people are connecting that way.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so it's still, I mean, we are still going as a language
Yeah.
and certainly as a community. I think there is still room for hope, but
Room for hope.
well, for some of the culture, but I don't know how many speakers there are going to be in 50 years' time, say.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
That's uh, we just can't tell, can we?
No.
I mean, miracles do happen, as you say. Like Cornish has revived, and Manx, is it?
Yeah. There's a great story I found that I think UNESCO had declared Manx an extinct language, and there's a primary school on the Isle of Man that teaches in Manx, and all the kids in the school says, "What language are we writing this letter in then?" And they wrote in, which I just thought the kind of guts of that was so. I mean, it's so bold
Yeah.
of those kids. I mean, they're little kids. But yeah, there are these stories, but I suppose it's also about having lost the place. We're not in our place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and that's something that I'm sure a lot of people on here know Ellie Timon, who set up the archive, a wonderful archive of speakers, which I really recommend anyone going onto. And what's amazing is they're all telling the stories, so you get the stories as well as the language. But he said to me, languages are, oh, I can't remember how he put it exactly, but they are connected to place, when you're out of context.
right.
Not the
Yeah.
same.
And yeah, and as you say, we can't go there.
No.
Can't go there, but we are still here.
Mm.
So it is a part of our identity.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I always thought I would go there, but as you know, it's always been you know, a crime in Iraq to have any connection with the state of Israel. And because I mean, my dad went to Israel and lived there for many years, and most of us know someone in our family who did, who does live there now even. And I think it was in 2021 or 2023 that they made it a death penalty offence. So I mean, I'm not
Yes,
going now.
yes.
I mean,
Yeah,
I don't want.
2021. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So
Right.
it's
Although they haven't actually killed anyone for consorting
no.
Jews or, trying to normalize with Israelis.
No,
Uh,
they haven't, but who wants to get off the plane and fear
yeah,
that?
it wants to be the first one.
No. And also what we can't do, I suppose what I'm going to say, because people have said to me, oh, but you could go, you'll probably be fine. Yeah, probably we would be fine. But what we can't do is go and be relaxed and go and see the places. I mean, we couldn't wander the streets as if, I don't know, we both left Paris. We couldn't go back to Paris and sit in a cafe and be relaxed and see where our grandparents live. We couldn't do that in Iraq like that. We would be
Yeah,
anxious.
yeah.
Uh, I,
It would
I,
be
I,
very enjoyable anyway.
no, it wouldn't feel like a homecoming of any kind, I don't think. We
Yeah.
wouldn't be able to be honest with anyone we met about why we were there. I
Um,
just, it's not the same. It's not going back if it's like
And as
that.
you say, things have changed. Like even the fish that people used to rave about, which they used to catch in the Tigris,
Yeah.
it's no longer the same fish because it's been feasting on dead bodies, hasn't it?
Yeah, the shabut that they used to make the musgoof out of,
Mm.
they discovered that unfortunately, both Azam and then afterwards, other sectarian groups were throwing their victims into the river. I mean, the whole thing is so awful, and then that fish it feeds on. So yeah, I mean there are so many stories like that which are very difficult to grasp even emotionally. Uh,
Yes. Oh my goodness. I've got so many more questions for you, Samantha, but I don't think it's fair on the audience because they
I
probably
can
have.
see we've got loads of it over here.
Oh, yeah, we've got loads, and I know we have a linguist called Ephraim Nissan who's on the call
Oh,
as well.
oh
So
yes, so I quoted him in yes, sorry, I've just seen it. Yes, hello. I quoted your scholarly article about the fish names in my book. I thought it was phenomenal. Um, how lovely that people are here. That's
yeah,
wonderful.
so I think just going through. Can you see the questions?
I'm just going to bring them up.
Yeah, bring them up. I know Lawrence has put up the link for the book
Oh, thank you.
on Amazon, and he's also been doing some research into Narbuk, and he
Oh
said
yeah.
they're available dried in London, and they're called
They're
red
red
dates.
dates, and they're from Afghanistan or Pakistan, and they cost about £1 each.
Those are slightly different from the Iraqi
It's
ones.
the same fruit. I
I was
tried.
told it's not quite the same. I might be wrong, but I was told
Fine.
it's not
Same.
exactly the same.
Right.
The
Okay.
Iraqi ones are very specific to Baghdad. I mean, I'm not I'm no expert, but that's what I was told. But they are a form of jujube, yeah.
Is
Yeah.
you?
Yeah.
Right, right.
I know
Yeah,
that I've shared with you a couple of amusing stories. Perhaps Lynn wants to tell them.
Okay.
No, those who say my parents, Selena says my parents spoke Judeo-Arabic to make sure we didn't understand what
Yeah,
they
mine as
say.
well. Here, well, my
Yeah,
mum is here. Yeah. You
and
did.
mine
Very
too,
good.
mine too. And I mean, what you're saying is so true that we ended up understanding it, but we couldn't
Yes.
speak it. There's like
Yeah.
it was like a passive language.
Yeah.
And I call it a mother ear rather than a mother tongue.
Yeah, that's interesting. I went really backwards and forwards on whether it is a mother tongue if you don't speak it. But
Yeah,
I was told again by some of the linguists that if it's a language you are spoken to as a small child and
yeah,
put to bed to the intimate language of your early childhood, then it counts. I mean, who cares? Really, like we're not experts here. I'm not an expert, but it does count if you were talking to a linguist. But I read this, I can't remember who calls it a milk language, which I think,
Right.
that you take it in with your mother's milk. I thought that was a gorgeous way of describing it.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I'm looking at the oh, someone's asking about I think we talked about the Maslawi
That's right.
Arabic was very similar,
Very similar, but doesn't have the Aramaic
the same base.
yeah,
Yeah.
the same base.
Oh,
Yeah.
someone else is asking you, is it comprehensible to other Iraqis? Yes, I think so, but they would know that you were Jewish.
Yeah. When you opened your mouth. Yeah.
Oh, someone else is asking about the details of the course. If you Google Oxford School of Rare Jewish Languages, you'll find it. And on there, they call it Baghdadi Judeo-Arabic. No, Judeo-Baghdadi Arabic. You have to apply. It's once a year you can apply. So I'm not sure when the date is, but you apply and it's annually. And I do recommend it. Um, uh,
Right. Yeah. And I think Gabriel Mergi says that his grandmother said it was not such a bad thing to go back to a place where people don't appreciate you. Because she said it in Moroccan Jewish
Oh wow.
Arabic.
Someone's asking about Kurdish Jewish food, but I don't know anything about that, I'm afraid. Um,
Yeah, and of course, the Kurdish Jews did not speak Arabic; they spoke
yeah.
Aramaic. Didn't?
Yes, and there's also a Kurdish Jewish dialect, but I'm not sure what it is, I'm afraid.
Yes, yeah. I mean,
Um,
it's interesting because the Kurds speak Kurmanji, which is not
yeah,
Arabic, but the Kurdish Jews speak Aramaic, which of course
yes.
goes back to, maybe the Assyrian exile, perhaps.
Yeah, I'm not an expert on the Kurdish community, but I mean, it is they're not speaking the same language as the Jews were speaking in Baghdad and
No,
Basra.
no, indeed,
Lovely.
indeed, yeah, no. So, if anyone else has got any questions, please do write them in the chat. I have one more question for you, which is about
Yes.
superstition.
Oh yeah.
Uh, how superstitious are Iraqi Jews? I mean,
Oh
this
well.
business salt in your pocket and all that. I have to say, my family never did this.
Oh really? Oh well.
Yeah.
So I mean, maybe. I mean, I'm quite superstitious, but I don't know whether how much is a personality and how much is a cultural. So I was brought up with, I'm wearing. I don't know if people can see. I'm wearing my
Uh,
Hamza with a
Comes
blue
that?
stone.
Yes.
And I to always carry salt, which is going to be the American title, funnily enough. So we
Right.
would put it into our clothes. I mean, not every day, but say you're going somewhere, you're nervous. This idea of the evil eye was very sort of present in, and I mean, I think that most Iraqi Jews have come across it, even if you don't, if you're more rational than me, and don't believe in it. I know some of my cousins don't believe in any of this stuff, and some of them are interested. But but this idea of the evil eye is a sort of free floating, evil force. And when someone is jealous and that comes in through their eyes and looks at you and can cause you harm.
Oh,
And the person
okay.
who's jealous, they don't mean to. They're just living their own life experiencing. They don't even know that the evil eye is coming through their eyes and is causing harm. So anyway, so it's quite alarming because it can happen to anyone. And let's face it, we're all envious of someone at some point, for something. None of us is perfect. So I found this quite terrifying as a child, the idea it could be anywhere. So yeah, we used to put certainly when I was little salt into the pockets of the clothes or in the hems of the clothes. And yeah, I do like to wear my protective protective jewelry. And when there's I don't have it with me now, but there's a little amulet that I think is only Iraqi Jews use it, called an
Right.
afsa, which
Oh,
is
yeah.
made of oak gall nuts, and it's like two nuts like this, and then a little little hums are coming down with a blue stone, and the two nuts are wrapped in gold strands.
Yes.
Um, and someone told me the other day that the gall nuts, the reason they use the oat gall nuts is that they have an antibacterial property, but who knows? Anyway, these used to be pinned to babies'
Yeah.
clothes when they were
Yeah.
little.
Yes.
I have one which I wear as a necklace, but it's quite big. I mean, I didn't pin it to my child's clothes, um, but it it is quite it's quite heavy,
Yeah.
You imagine a lot of children would have flung it off them in the night, but
I think if they were small babies, then they probably didn't actually do that.
yeah. But this, I mean, there's something very beautiful about the idea of protection. Uh,
Yes,
and
yes.
that's all it is really, I suppose, protection.
Especially in the environment where you could die of a plague or something, and that whole phrase "Ishlonok" means "what color are you?" I mean, how did that?
Yes. Well, this is possibly just a folk
Yeah,
etymology, I was told, but
yeah.
apparently
Okay.
it comes from a time where there was a plague that sort of changed, the color, your skin color, skin tone, and
Right.
people would literally be going, when I ask you, Echelonic, I'd be asking you, have you got the plague? You know, or have you had it? Are you going to give it to me?
Are you
So, are
contagious?
you contagious? So, and I was told this is probably a pop etymology and not the real, but it's an interesting it's an interesting etymology. It might be real. We don't know. We don't know with all of these etymologies.
Yeah, yeah, no, no, that's amazing, isn't it? So Ada said, oh, Rachel has read your book on Anne Bronte and how to be
Oh,
a
thank
heroine.
you.
Yes, I've read How to Be a Heroine, which is a brilliant
Oh, thank you.
Anne Bronte. And Ida says her parents spoke Judeo-Arabic. She would listen to and ask what a certain word meant, not realizing that she'd absorbed all the other words.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And when her grandmother arrived from Baghdad, it was all she spoke. So Ida needed to speak to her, and the words came tumbling out of me. Is that lucky you that they
Yeah,
came tumbling
that's
out of you?
wonderful. I mean, that wasn't my experience. My my language is still so bad. Oh,
There's a
someone
lot.
saying you could pin
Yes,
the answer in the
yeah,
cot or the pram. Yeah, that's probably better. Yeah, that would have been a more sensible thing than try to pin it to the child
for the
um,
child. Yeah,
themselves.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
That's right. I think. Um, Let me see what else. Yes, yes, you have to. Okay, and lots of compliments here, or a few
That's
anyway.
very nice, thank you. I was wondering if I could ask if anyone has read the book. Sorry, this is I hate having to ask this, but if anyone's read it, would you please leave just a one word review on Amazon? Just because I've had, like I said, this amazing response from the community, but I'm trying to get it because it's got so many stories in of our community that I would like to get to a wider audience, and that apparently helps other readers to find it. So sorry to ask, but
No,
if anyone has read it, please do. Even just one word is brilliant.
no, that's great. And as I
Um,
say, it's quite remarkable that you had two articles in the Guardian, two
yeah.
reviews, and so I'm thinking that perhaps this whole story can reach a non-Jewish audience because what we desperately need is to fight this tendency to be erased and ignored. As you say,
Yes,
to tick
absolutely.
other on the forms, like we need our own identity. And maybe you are getting through to Guardian readers of all people,
Well, I mean, I would love to get through to a wider audience in our community, not
Yeah,
because it's my family
yeah,
story or my book, but because I really feel this responsibility of, particularly of my generation, this kind of middle generation, where we still have access to all these stories and memories and everything, to really to tell them. Um, and I felt like if I can't speak the language, I can at least speak about it. Um, but yeah, I
yeah.
just saw another couple of messages. Um, oh, it should be available in Canada, but I will find out. It should be available in Canada. It should be available in Canada and Australia now as well as the UK, but
It's only in America that it's not available yet.
not
I
till
think it's
next
got
year.
different
Yeah.
types and it's
Oh,
got different.
someone's asking about Maimonides. Uh,
Yeah.
I am not, no, I don't think an Iraqi Jewish speaker now would be able but I might be wrong. I mean, just because of he's using quite an archaic language, and I think he's writing a more classical Judeo-Arabic than what was spoken. But probably they would understand most of it, as far as I
Oh,
know.
it's interesting. Selena says, my Safta, that's her grandmother, and her mother used to pin a tiny hamsa to her bra for good luck in exams.
I
Well,
mean,
that's a good one.
yeah, absolutely. I don't know about anyone else here, but I mean, certainly because when I became a mum, I became more superstitious. I really thought when I became a mother that I didn't want my son to grow up fearful. I didn't want him to fear this evil eye, this mysterious force, and whatever. But actually, once I had the actual child in front of me, I wanted to protect him.
Yeah.
And I think there's something very loving about it if you're not if you're giving them fears, but if you are, I think a lot of the superstition really is about love.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
wishing you good luck
Yeah.
with your exams, or
Yes. Right. So Selena says she's not sure it worked.
maybe not, but maybe the thought was there. Um,
So,
um,
oh, interesting that oh, in Israel, families tried to get their kids to learn Hebrew and Judeo-Arabic, and it was looked down on as a peasant language. That's interesting because when I talked to my mother about Judeo-Arabic, she said, "Oh, it's a colloquial Arabic,
yeah.
like they thought of it as somehow being inferior, I think, to perhaps what the Muslims
Well,
spoke."
I think this has been a real problem, and this is partly why I'm calling it a language, not a dialect, because like it or not, people think language is important and dialect is nothing. And honestly, I did talk to linguists, and they said it really is a very fine distinction, and we don't really use it. But
Yeah.
I felt like if I could call it either, I was going to call it the one that was more, it was spoken for thousands of years. So we need to value it. And I feel that that now is the time really, to value it, before it's
Mhm.
completely gone.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and
I
that's
think,
why having archives
yeah,
is so amazing, sorry.
yeah. And it's no, go ahead. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I mean, when I came, because when I first, had this experience in the playground of feeling like it's gone, I can't pass it on. Um, when I discovered, via my mum, of course, Ellie Tillman's archive, and there were all these people, my grandmother was on there. There were lots of people I knew on there, lots of people I didn't know, and it was run by SOAS. I just thought, oh, this is phenomenal. We exist. I felt like we exist because although there have been wonderful books written about by Iraqi Jews and about our community, and I can see Carol Isaacs is here as a wonderful writer as well about the community. We have got this literature, but still, I feel there is a sense that there is a bit of fighting to do against the idea that there were no. I mean, people say to me, there were Jews in Iraq. Still, this is still a reaction that we
Yeah,
get.
yeah. That we
Um,
exist somehow. Yeah,
yeah.
that European settlers and all that. Yeah. Actually, the one thing that occurred to me is that, there are well-meaning people, especially in Israel, who feel that if their children learn Arabic, this will, help preserve the culture. But of course, the Arab culture, the Arab Muslim culture is not the same as the Jewish culture, and the language, as you say, or we'll call it a dialect or a language, is not the same. And
Mm.
I think what's happened is there's been a flattening of of Judeo-Arabic. Well, it's not been preserved because people, they're well-meaning and they want to preserve Arabic, but they're confusing it with Muslim Arabic or Palestinian Arabic and this sort of thing.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, I think it is different. Someone's asking me about Ladino loan words. I don't think there are very many, because
Mm,
although there was contact, I haven't come across any really more Persian loan words,
right.
as in borrowings. But yes, sorry, I mean, there is this flattening out, but also I think there's a flattening out. I mean, I use the word Mizrahi, but there is a flattening out because I mean, as we know, it just means eastern in Hebrew,
Yes.
and it refers to some places that are not east of Israel. You know, I mean, it's sort of a bit of a weird.
West and
Exactly. But also, while we have a lot in common, say, with Yemenite Jews, Iraqi Jews are quite different. Our culture is quite different. We're not all one big lump, and
when people talk about Arab Jews, they are flattening out
I
Jews to
think so. I mean,
similar.
really, I would like everyone to say uh, Jews from the Middle East and North Africa, but I mean, there's quite no one's got time.
As you
Yeah.
say.
I mean, that's the most accurate.
We say it. We say
Yeah,
it.
we say it, but it is, yeah, you do, which is wonderful. But it is the most accurate because that is where we are from, yeah. And I mean, I find Arab Jews is quite correct with the Iraqi Jews because the Iraqi Jews were there before the Arab conquest. So
Exactly.
it,
That's what I say anyway.
yeah,
They were not Arabs, and they were not Arabs, exactly.
no.
Just to say that I think it's Ephraim Nissan who says there were two words in our dialect from the Venetian dialect.
Oh wow.
Signora, which is insurance, and fanela, which is an undervest.
Oh wow.
That's
I
fascinating.
did not know that. That's phenomenal.
And I know palto is from the French, isn't it? Palto. But I don't know
Oh.
if that is a Judeo-Arabic word or whether it's gone
I
into.
don't know. I don't know. I mean, there's lots of later on you get borrowings from the French from English, with the especially with the British Mandate and like I mean, you know, um there are words that are borrowed from European languages as well, but I think there's a lot of Persian, and there's a lot, but the Aramaic, I mean, it really is quite striking how much Aramaic is still in there, when you start, you know, teasing it apart. And something not something I'm qualified to do, but that's what I've been told.
Right. Yeah, that's fascinating though, isn't it? And Grace says her grandson who lives in Boston and who's 16 goes to a Jewish school is learning Arabic, the Palestinian Arabic, by an Israeli teacher, but she's trying to teach him ours.
Oh,
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm sure the school thought they were doing you a favor by teaching your grandson Arabic, but it's not the same. It's not the same.
No, I mean, I think the trouble is there aren't that many people who can teach.
Mm.
Which is why this one course was so, such a privilege that it exists. But hopefully there'll be more. Actually, the academic, Asaf Bar Moshe, who teaches the course, he started out studying, I think Mandarin, anyway, one of the Chinese languages, and he was sort of about to do his PhD, and his supervisor said, why are you doing? I mean, a billion people could do research into this. You're part of an endangered language yourself. You've got to switch to that one. And it's really interesting that's what, and I mean, we're very lucky that he did do that, but he's one of the very few, you know,
Yes,
um,
experts
people
in the
who's done
language.
it. Um,
Yeah.
so-
It's been absolutely fascinating
Oh,
talking
yeah,
to you,
Ephraim would like
Samantha.
to join the conversation, darling.
Right. Shall we put him on?
I definitely think so.
Yes. Well, Ephraim, hello.
Yes,
so-
okay,
You're on.
thank you. I just wanted to say the very fact that there are words from Venice reflects the stage in history before the trade was really born in Italy. Because rabbis, in order to print the books, used to send them to Venice.
Yeah.
And actually, as in the 18th century, there was piracy in the Adriatic Sea. They had to do that by caravan.
By caravan.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. Oh, that's amazing. Thank you for that.
Also, the very fact that the Mosul, the Moslawi dialect, is similar to the Baghdadi Jewish and Christian dialects actually reflect the fact that in the Middle Ages, the center of Iraq became Bedouinized because the arrival of new tribes from the Arabian Peninsula. And actually, that reflects the fact that the Jews and the Christians speak the dialect that was of all Iraq in the Caliphal era. That shows that there are more indigenous to Iraq than the general Iraqis are in the Baghdad area.
Okay, well,
Right.
thank you.
Yeah, that's very interesting that the Bedouin Arabic took over, didn't it? And somehow, but the Christians and the Jews speak the original, the ancient version of Arabic. It's a bit like as if we were talking Chaucerian English, I suppose. You know
Yeah,
what
I mean,
Chaucerian English?
when I was studying it, I was a bit annoyed at some point because, we would be told, oh, most Iraqis have got rid of this archaic bit of grammar, but we've hung on to it. And I was thinking, oh no, I'm just gonna have to learn this construction now. But there's something very beautiful about that. I mean, annoying if you're trying to learn it, but
Yeah,
how amazing that we are retaining these structures and constructions, and ways of speaking, really.
yeah, yeah, absolutely fascinating.
Joe
Great.
Sam's had his hand up for a long time. Shall I
Is
let Joe?
it?
Yes.
I think one last intervention
Oh,
before
yes.
Joe Sam has very patiently had his
Yeah.
hand
Hi,
up.
Joe. I can see you're in your Californian villa with the swimming pool behind.
Hello.
Yes.
And very much for your interest in the language and writing the book. I'm 1 year younger than your grandmother.
Oh, right.
I want to comment first of all about the fidwa. Muslims used to say fidwa alik. Also, they use it. And superstition was part of the culture that I grew up in. When my brother got sick, my mother used to get melted lead and put it in a pot, that you can, that maybe my brother will get better. He got better. I don't know it's from that or the typically. Also, superstition about don't pour hot water on the ground because of the jinnis. They may be upset.
The jinn. Yeah. The spirits.
And
Yeah.
of course, the language was all influenced by other, like charpaya, ichaharpaya, like 4 legs.
Yeah.
Or mukhadda and mukhadda from Spanish. So
Oh, okay. Yeah. That's fascinating. But
yeah,
you're
so
saying the Muslims also said fudwa, but they said fudwa alayk.
Okay.
kapara alayk, yeah. And
Right.
in my book, I write about my mother's cooking, the tabid, maraq bajij, and all kinds of things. So thank you again, really.
Thank you. And of course, Joe's written a book, his autobiography, and it's called Beyond the Rivers of Babylon. Yeah, that's right. So got the plug in. Okay, so well, I'd just like to thank you so much, Samantha. I
Thank
think
you.
got everybody itching to read the book, and I certainly recommend it. And I think you're doing such an important job, actually, as a keeper, as an archivist of all. And you're doing it in such a readable and witty and informative way. So, kola kabod, as they would say in it.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you everyone for coming. It's really, really lovely to be part of this. Thank you.
I wish you luck with it. Well, I think you've got off to a flying start anyway.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so I think as is our custom, we're going to put the advertisements on. So please do stay with us. We're starting at the end. This is actually an in-person film we're showing at the end of June. It's about an episode based on a true story that happened to Salonican Jews when the Nazis showed up to where they were to the place where they were actually hiding. and that's at JW3 on the 30th of June. And we've got other events coming up. This is obviously tonight's. This is on the 20th of May, Tunisian Jews under Nazi rule, as we are coming up to the 80th anniversary of the end of the war. We've got these two events. The next one is about the 1945 Tripolitania pogrom on the 6th of May with Vivian Rumani Den. And I shall be talking to Linda Dangour about her new book, which is about food and stories and immigration and lots of food. And that's this Salonican film at the end of June. Okay, so are we going to unmute everybody?
I will stop the recording.
Yeah.
End the recording.
So